So root of title, as the name would suggest, gives you a title search that gives you the first documented registered transaction of title where ownership would have been created. Under the old law system, it will be the very first deed, often given by His Excellency, the President of Trinidad and Tobago. And those in the under the old law, you will see any 1902 deed, 1905, 1918, right? When land titles were first created, you will see that kind of root, the very first registered instrument. Under the RPO, it is the certificate of title, the very first granted certificate of title in relation to the title and or the crown grant associated with the title. That's what you mean by the root, where the title begin, and then you come down over the years and you have a record of all the transactions that transpired after that. And a proper title search is supposed to not just record each transaction, but legally scrutinize each transaction to see if there was any error in any of them. Because so that's a proper root of title. I've seen many title searches that simply just recites all the transactions coming down the road. That's great. We got it. We got the deed numbers. We got the volume and folio numbers coming down the road. But was each transaction sound? Were there any errors either in law or in procedure that affects the validity of the title? I know Mr. McLean, over the years working together, you have seen where I saw title was bad, even though the transactions were registered. That does not confirm that the title is sound. Sometimes an attorney 17 years ago made an error because they were not a conveyancing attorney, or 35 years there was an error. Right? It is very possible for registered transactions to have errors that affect the validity or the strength of title in law, meaning that the title can be challenged because one of the transactions were illegal, or it did not happen, or it did not pass. Why is that important? And that is why banking institutions, as a person's trust that when you do title searches of banking institutions, they are very particular. Also, one of our clients, the Tobago House of Assembly, they are very particular as well, because you have to scrutinize to verify not only that the transaction happened and it was registered, but it happened correctly in law. Because if a deed is found to have an illegality, it will and can be set aside and made voidable in law to the extent of its illegality. Let me repeat that. If a transaction is found to be unsound in law, or mostly in law, not procedure, right? There is something, and it is found to validly be illegal, or there's an illegality of sort, or the incorrect party would have executed it or executed it incorrectly. There's some distinct error that needs to be rectified. That transaction can be set aside and made voidable in law as if it did not happen. And that is very powerful because it means that the last registered owner, now their title has been extinguished, or it automatically disappears. So they no longer have the legal power, authority, or strength to give you anything because the title did not pass to the extent of its illegality. So title searches are fundamentally important. You can have registered documents in your hand that can be taken away from you and expunged from the record. And if that happens, it is as if your document does not exist, and by extension, your ownership does not exist. So you would have paid millions of dollars for something that does not exist in law. I particularly remember a recent, very difficult title search that I would have done involving the bank, where I think 32 years ago, one of the transactions were executed, by virtue of power of attorney, right? In the recitals of the deed, the wife of the person who owns it in law said that she had power of attorney, but the deed failed to recite the registered instrument of power of attorney upon which she relied. Searches discovered that no such power of attorney ever existed. And so she signed for the transfer, but she did not have actual power of attorney. So there was no conveyance that happened there, because the party who signed to convey did not vest the power in time in law for that. There was no power of attorney. So that entire transaction was set aside, and it meant all the 5 transactions that came after it was also voidable. Then this man died by the time we discovered it. So now we had to wait for the legal personal representative of his estate to do over the deed and rectify it and agree if they wanted to sell it. When we found the LPR said, no, I want to keep it for my father. This woman was married to my father. We didn't like her. We don't know what she was doing, and we are not honoring the transaction. And they refused. And so this purchaser would have lost their money, and now they're fighting in court for it. But these things can happen with registered documents, right? Registered documents, especially under the old law, can be unsound in law or entitled. All right, Mr. McLean, what are some hidden costs in acquiring a home? Oh, you answered that already.
Yeah, so we sort of touched on that one. So we're looking at from Ms. Highway, from there down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were just about to touch on that. Who pays for the deed of mortgage? Right. So who pays for the deed of mortgage and who pays for the deed of conveyance? So usually both of these are paid by the purchaser. Right. Usually both of these are paid by the purchaser. The purchaser usually bears most of the closing costs of the transaction. Who in your experience, Ms. Daniel, who normally pays for the sale agreement? That's something that often is a toss-up, because you see, if I could just explain, sometimes you have a buyer who says, okay, I'm interested, let's go. The vendor goes and does the sale agreement, and then the buyer can't get him, can't find him, he disappears. So how do we mitigate that situation of wasting a vendor's time because they paid for a sale agreement?
Because who paid for the sale agreement?
So we're saying that the vendor should pay, right, for the sale agreement. But here we have a buyer who says, okay, I'm interested, I'm ready, let's go, bring the sale agreement. And then when the sale agreement is paid for and it's brought before them, they have a change of heart, boy, I can't make a gain, things different. You know,
a sale agreement, once you already pay for it, just get a new buyer and edit it. Edit the name and use the same sale agreement. When you pay for a sale agreement, an attorney is supposed to fairly be able to amend it. You know, you've already paid for it. A vendor could keep using the same sale agreement for 10 different buyers. Just keep changing the name. But you see, a sale agreement.
Ms. Daniel, you're still breaking up a bit. So I don't know, you may want to, you're still breaking up, at least on my end.
Okay, I don't know what to do for that. I don't understand Mr. Barron's question to say why use the law as obstacle rather than just cooperate in the spirit of the transaction. Because the spirit of transactions it's a subjective variable and the law is not. So I prefer to use an objective variable in a transaction. Substance over legal form. So substance is interpretive. What may be the spirit of or the intention of the transaction or the ethos of the document can mean two very different things to each party.